Today, on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat, the crew at MCU cools down a boat built for offshore fun and cruising.
I can't wait to see how well this thing functions. It's like on a drawer, it slides in and out. It's got a lock to where it's not going to fly open by itself.
FS Boating editor George Labonte joins Dreamboat owner Robert Fleming aboard his tricked-out 32-foot Seacraft.
He started out with a plain old Seacraft, but what he ended up with was certainly custom, and I'm sure something that's going to give him enjoyment until the next project comes along.
And Brian O'Donnell heads down to the Keys to join the owner of the completed 19-foot Cuda Craft for a day on the water.
It was actually a really cool time, and I was able to learn a lot of things about the boat that Ron had custom designed for himself to perform his business as a professional guide in the Florida Keys.
All coming up on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat.
All right, so I recently had a customer reach out to me to tell me that he's looking for a good option to keep in his drinks and food cool on the boat. This boat's pretty unique. There's not a lot of space or room on the boat for a cooler, so they want something built in. So I did a little research and found out that Engel has this new product that's actually a rollout freezer cooler. So I'm gonna get Steve up in his boat to take the front hatch out to see what we have to do to get this fridge freezer installed in the cabin of the boat.
I'm doing some work on a protector boat from New Zealand. I call them bubble boats because they get like a bubble around them. And Brian just brought me this Engel refrigerator freezer. It actually is a pretty cool spot where he wanted this in this particular boat because it is in the cabin and you got like bunk seating on each side and you can reach down and just slide this thing open, get a cold drink out or your cold sandwich. But I've got to make sure it's going to fit. So I pop off the little hatch where it's going to go and I take some measurement and I said, yeah, it will fit in there, but we're going to have to raise it up from the original cut of the hatch size. So I'm going to have to enlarge the hole. And boy, this bulkhead that I've got to cut, boy, these protector boats, they're made, you know, to run in 30-foot seas with no problem. So I've got like 3.5 inches of fiberglass wood to cut through. You could probably drop this boat off a 10-story building and it won't affect the structure of it.
All right, so while I got Steve out there cutting out that forward bulkhead, I'm gonna work with Richie on the inside here and start to make a custom trim bezel. So to get this project started for Rich, I told him that he had to build a template from the forward part of the bulkhead. I wanted him to do this out of cardboard because I didn't want him to experiment with a piece of 3/4 inch starboard, which costs a lot of money. He was able to build the template pretty quick. After he had the template fitting perfect, he was able to put it on the starboard, transfer it over, cut his piece, and fit it into the boat. It actually fit really nice. Then he was able to measure and mock up where the fridge freezer was gonna go. After we got the fridge fit in place, we were able to measure out and figure out where our vents were gonna go. The main reason for this trim bezel was to build in the ventilation and add a custom touch. Richie had no idea what I had in mind, but I knew that I was gonna go ahead and rabbet the back of these slots that we put in for the ventilation and then put a screen and staple it from the back side. It just gave it a really nice custom touch and it didn't look like someone just mounted and screwed a vent to the face of the bulkhead.
Now that I've got my hole cut, I got my bezel at the same time. So now I'm going to mount the bezel up to the refrigerator. It looks good, trimmed perfectly. So now I'm going to make my wire connections. Just 2 wires, DC operated refrigerator. 2 wires each. I'm going to make my connections. I'm going to heat shrink them down. Now we're going to slide it up permanently into the compartment it's going into, and then I'm going to secure the bezel to the existing bulkhead that it's attached to. And this refrigerator ain't going to go nowhere. But I can't wait to see how well this thing functions. It's like on a drawer, it slides in and out. It's got a lock to where it's not going to fly open by itself. Can't wait to see the performance of it.
All right, so after the installation of this fridge freezer, I think me and Steve both realized how simple and easy this installation was. I could see me installing these in a lot more boats. This thing, the function and the fit was pretty simple and easy. I didn't have to go ahead and add this custom trim bezel, but it was just something I wanted to do. This refrigerator has only been on for a couple hours and it's ready. This thing's ice cold and it's only running off of 12 volts. I think that's pretty incredible.
When we return, FS Boating editor George Labonte joins Dreamboat owner Robert Fleming aboard his tricked-out 32-foot Seacraft in this week's One Man's Dreamboat segment. This segment brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
When you're moving a big offshore boat, it's all about thrust and trust. For thrust, nothing compares to the Yamaha purpose-built 5.3-liter V8 Power Pioneer. And for trust, Yamaha's new F350C model becomes the only outboard in its horsepower class to feature a 5-year limited warranty. Never settle for less than complete confidence and control in the open water. That's Yamaha V8 Power. Get the best and forget the rest.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us for this week's One Man's Dreamboat segment with Florida Sportsman Boating editor George Labonte as we feature anglers who have already launched their dream. Florida Sportsman began these features 30 years ago, and the dreams just keep getting better.
This week, we meet up with Robert Fleming and his son RJ to have a look at their 32 Seacraft, which was restored at MCU. Now, I had a chance to look at this boat a couple of times in the restoration process, but I hadn't seen it finished, and I was very excited to see how it turned out. Now, Robert's previous boating experience was mainly inshore. In fact, he came out of a flats boat to buy this boat. But after a few trips to the offshore grounds with some of his friends, he decided that a blue water boat was definitely going to be quickly in his future.
I purchased a 32 Seacraft probably 4.5, 5 years ago for $42,000. Seeing it online, it looked like it was in great condition. I came down, we did a sea trial. I realized the guy didn't know anything about the boat, and I don't think the guy ever even took the boat out, so I figured it had hardly any hours on it. At the time, this seemed like a good buy until we got it home and realized it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, so.
Having never done a project like this before, Robert had no idea what he was getting into, but it was quickly becoming apparent that this was going to be a lot more than he had expected from the outset.
I brought it down because I was going to do the Armstrong bracket and close the transom in. And then talking to Brian, and then it just totally blew up from there. 10 minutes of being with him, he picked the boat apart. The interior was trashed. The boat had never been in a shed, nothing. Sit in the sun its whole life. So everything about the boat, the appearance, I mean, structurally it was good, but appearance-wise it looked like it was all faded out. Stitching was going, boat needed everything.
After coming to the realization of what actually needs to be done, it was time to start tearing into the boat. Prior to tackling this restoration, Robert had heard stories about how Seacrafts were notorious for sinking.
That's what started the whole process of wanting to close the transom in and put the bracket on. So I started doing a little more research, and that's how I ran across Armstrong bracket. Well, the biggest benefit we gained was before we closed the transom in, the ladder clipped on the back of the original transom of the boat. Have you ever climbed up at a negative degree? It's almost impossible to get into that particular Seacraft the way it was designed before, because as you're climbing up, it's pushing you away from the boat. Putting the bracket on, and then that new ladder they have now where it goes inside the bracket is awesome. Well, the boat originally only had 300 gallons of fuel. It had 250-gallon tanks, so I knew I wanted more fuel. So when I was talking to Brian, he's like, well, we probably ought to check the fuel tanks anyway. And I said, well, if we're gonna check them, we might as well replace them. So at that point, that's when I came up with the idea I wanted to put the 400-gallon fuel tank in the middle. We gained 2 fish boxes, which are 3.5 feet wide by 10 foot long now, that I didn't have before. Or dry storage. They are insulated, so you could use them as coolers, fish box, whatever. One nice thing about it is now you don't have to, when you do catch a fish, you don't have to put it in coffin box in the front of the boat, which is where we keep all our drinks. We kind of use that as our hold and ice chest. And as we catch fish, we put them in one of the side fish boxes and we throw ice on the fish. So it keeps the mess to the back of the boat. The other biggest feature is before our live well was in the floor. So you were on your hands and knees trying to dip a bait, and now it's up top. So you're standing there, you don't have to bend over or nothing. So it's 100 times better. It used to have to put the anchor underneath the bow. I had him cut the bow of the boat out up top, make my anchor lid, put a tube in so you can drop the chain in, lock the anchor in.
With all of the major structural work out of the way, it was time to turn Brian loose on the cosmetics, the fun part, if you will.
Honestly, what I love about the boat the most is the dash and the electronics. I mean, by far, I think that's what he does the best. There's nothing you see coming out of a manufactured boat right now, for sure. The paint is crazy. Everybody up around where we live thinks it's an FWC boat. So they look at it at first, and then they wonder if they're getting pulled over second because they're thinking we're gonna jump out with a badge. But yeah, the stripe, everybody walks up and they're rubbing the stripe. They're like, that's a decal? I'm like, no, that's painted on and it's faded. And they're like, wow. I mean, they're just blown away by that. I mean, Brian's guys did an awesome job there. I mean, he couldn't ask for a better paint job.
Now this boat is rigged up to fish a number of different fisheries, and it's set up to handle all different kinds of scenarios, from bottom fishing to offshore big water trolling. More important than the fishability of the boat, this was going to provide Robert an opportunity to spend a lot of quality time with his son, which was very important to him when he decided to undertake this project.
Now that it's done, I'd like to build something else because that's me. But as far as, I mean, yeah, it is I would build the same thing again, for sure. Maybe some different power, more power, to get some more speed out of the boat. But for the most part, I don't think I'd change much of nothing.
Robert's boat was one of the cleanest I've ever seen, and I'm sure all these Sure-Hold products that we presented him with are going to help him keep it that way. Robert made it clear to us that he really likes the customization of whether it's a truck or a boat or anything in his life. He's into building stuff, and he started out with a plain old Seacraft, but what he ended up with was certainly custom, and I'm sure something that's going to give him enjoyment until the next project comes along.
After purchasing the boat for $42,000 and spending $200,000 on repairs and custom modifications, the cost of Robert's Dreamboat comes to a total of approximately $242,000. When we return, Brian O'Donnell joins the owner of the completed 19-foot Coodercraft for a day on the water in the Florida Keys. This segment brought to you by Bennett, superior by design.
50 years ago, Bennett Marine changed boating forever, inventing the trim tab, helping boaters get on plane faster, reduce bow rise, correct listing, improve efficiency, and increase performance. Over 1 million systems later, worldwide, we offer durable and dependable trim tabs and hatch lifters for all boat sizes. Your only source for both hydraulic and electric systems. Industry-leading innovation, plus the best warranty and service available. Get Bennett on board and enjoy the ride.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us as Brian O'Donnell joins the owner of the completed 19-foot Coodercraft for a day on the water.
All right, guys, so we had this 19-foot Coodercraft at the shop that we had basically completely revamped. It came in for a simple little fuel tank repair job, and it morphed into a huge project. We had no idea that when we cut this boat up that we were going to find all kinds of problems. We ended up pulling the deck out of the boat, removing the fuel tank, replacing it, finding that the stringers were delaminated. We had to actually bond them back to the hull. There were so many things we had to do to this boat, not to mention the custom little touches that Captain Ron had us do just to personalize the boat to him. He's a captain down in the Florida Keys, and he's been running boats since back in the 1950s, and he wanted this boat personalized around himself. So after a couple of weeks of Ron receiving this boat down in Islamorada, he actually gave me a ring back at the shop and told me there's some things he wanted to change. He didn't like the rocket launcher seat that was built out of aluminum where you slide a cooler up under it. It was just too big and clumsy, and I had a really great idea. I reached out to my friends at Angle Coolers. I told them I needed a perfect size cooler that would mount on top of a box that I would build, and I would build a tackle center. I called Ron and told him that I'd personally deliver it down to Islamorada. He invited me out on a boat trip with my girls to go fishing on one of the little patch reefs, and I thought that was gonna be awesome. So one of the first things I had to do when I got to Islamorada was get Ron down in the boat, give me a hand taking the old seat out, and position a new box behind the console. I had Ron stand behind the helm, give me an idea of where he wanted this box mounted, because once the box was mounted, it was going to be permanent. I put some 5200 down, I screwed it to the deck, and I installed the Angle cooler. The thing was incredible. He loved it.
Holy mackerel, I've never seen anything in my life like that. That is just wow. And then a pull-out tray underneath to put all your tackle in. It's just spectacular. It's just wonderful. I didn't even expect anything that good. It came out better than ever expected, you know.
So while I was in Islamorada, Ron took me and my girls out for a fishing trip. It was actually a really cool time, and I was able to learn a lot of things about the boat that Ron had custom designed for himself to perform his business as a professional guide in the Florida Keys.
You know, there's nothing sticking up on the boat along the bow or that would tangle the line when a person's fighting a tarpon or you're chasing a snook or something like that on the end of the line. It's easy cleaning, lots of storage, runs like a Cadillac through the chop. It just rides so soft. It's like I'm sitting on my living room couch as I'm driving the boat. It's that great, you know. Can't say enough about the boat.
There weren't a whole lot of custom things in this boat, but some of the things Ron had asked for, like the double-colored live wells, made a lot of sense to me after fishing with him on the boat.
The boat, when I bought it, of course, those boats were known for two big round live wells, two 20-gallon live wells on them, and one well I asked him to make it brown and one blue, and he kind of questioned why the difference, and I'm saying, when you have crabs and shrimp, by keeping them in a darker environment like a chocolate brown or that they take on a brown hue of the water, and that makes them stand out better when you throw it to a permit or you're even pitching it to a redfish on a flat. And then the other side, a real light blue color for pilchards and mullet, and that keeps them nice and bright and silvery. So Brian made both wells those colors. It kind of thought it was a little strange at first, but boy, it turned out just perfect, just perfect. Yeah.
So this boat was really simple, and it was out of the norm for marine customs with all the custom stuff that we typically do, but at the end of the day, it was perfect and it worked excellent for what Ron uses the boat for, and I think we couldn't have done a better job.
Originally when I got the boat, the console had speakers sticking out of the side. It had a T-top on it, a lot of gauges on the console, switches here and there, and I wanted as plain a console I could possibly get. So he filled in all of the holes on it, added just a couple little switches inside, a little thing for maybe charging your cell phone, and that turned out just great inside the console. And every one of the customers that I fished in it have been really happy with it, so they've really enjoyed the boat.
So visually looking from the outside, this 19 Coup de Craft doesn't look a whole lot different than when I started, but at the end of the day, Ron and I both know this boat's completely different. It's totally customized around Ron and for Ron, not to mention it's structurally sound, unlike it was before. So I hope Ron enjoys this boat for years to come.
I'm kind of old school. My designs are to get it done the way I'd like to see it. And of course, this is perhaps going to be my last boat, doing it for almost 50 years. So I wanted it done right, and it's met all expectations. He's just done a brilliant job with it. It's just spectacular.
So me and my girls had an amazing time down in Alamorado with Ron fishing, and this was a unique project for Marine Customs. It wasn't so custom as we would typically do, but it was very simple and it served a purpose. And after fishing on the boat with Ron all day, I realized boats don't have to be completely over the top to be someone's dream boat.
When we come back, MCU's master technician, Dave Singer, works to repair the steering on his 23-foot sailfish before its maiden voyage. This segment brought to you by Taco Marine. Innovative, quality products with extraordinary service.
The following is presented by Taco Marine.
Right here is why all the long hours. This is your escape. Fishing is your passion. It's time to turn out, set out, clip, raise lines, raise fish. Raise your heart rate. Raise your opportunities. Only with Taco Grand Slam outrigger mounts and telescoping poles.
For the finest, most reliable outrigger systems made, go to tacomarine.com.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us as MCU's master technician, Dave Singer, works to get his 23-foot sailfish ready for a weekend in the Keys.
All right, so my mechanic Dave has got this 23-foot sailfish that he's been refitting for the last year. He's totally excited about this trip that he's planned down to Marathon with his family for a vacation, but in typical Dave fashion, he's waited to the last minute to address some major problems, like the steering of the boat. He's completely forgot that the center steering arm in the swivel bracket was all dried up old grease, and the motors are very stiff and hard to steer. I told Dave not to worry and freak out. You get the boat into the shop, and I'm going to show you a quick fix. So as soon as I teach Dave this trick, he'll be able to get this boat down to the Keys and start enjoying it. I'm really looking forward to teaching Dave something else.
So, bringing in my boat today, it's a 2006 Sailfish. Got it a year or so ago. It had sank So I rewired it, been working on it through the year, and now I got it ready. And we took it out the other day for a sea trial because we're getting ready to go on a trip to the Keys. And I noticed the steering's super tight. Just, you can't operate the boat that way. I do not have time to do a proper repair, which would be to take the power head off, replace all the bushings, and go through that whole process. So we're gonna do a little temporary repair, and that's heating up the steering shaft. So on the motor, there's your bracket. In the bracket, there's a steering, that's where all your steering is. It's a tube, and it's got some bushings in there, and has a cavity for grease to be pumped in through a Zerk fitting. So what I gotta do is I gotta take some pieces off around this area because we're gonna be using a torch, and I love fire, so anytime I get to use fire. We're gonna go ahead and remove some of the pieces that can get damaged in the process. Once we got them all off, everything's clear, we go ahead and light our torch, get our tip set. I like, get the flame right. Once we start doing that, we start working the heat up and down on the shaft. I like to concentrate up towards the top because that's where the grease tends to harden or gel up, so to speak, and it actually works against you, and that's what causes it to bind. So once we get the temperature up, the grease starts flowing, the old stuff will start to flow out of the Zerk fitting, that's why we take it out. And then meanwhile, you're gonna work the engine back and forth, use a pry bar, try to get the engine to move up and down as much as you can. And then at that point, you let it cool down a little bit, and then go ahead and put a good quality grease back into it. Meanwhile, keep working it, use the pry bar, and what you're hoping for is at the top part of the steering mechanism up there, you want to see the grease starting to come out of there, and we were able to do that on mine, so that means I was able to get grease to flow from the bottom to the top. That's what you want. In the process of doing this, you're going to damage the paint. It's going to heat it up, discolor it, and you don't want to leave that exposed. You don't want corrosion to set in. So Yamaha offers factory match paint. So that's what I went ahead and used. It matches the motor perfect, and it's going to keep it sealed up, and I don't have to worry about no corrosion issues. So being that I'm in a time crunch, got everything reassembled, and went up and checked it out. No effort. It was pretty much like new. So it's going to get me through the week down in the Keys, and when I get back, I'll more than likely pull it apart and do the proper repair. But if you're in a pinch, that's probably the best and easiest thing you can ever do.
All right, so that's one of the things I love about Dave. I don't have to actually go out there and hold his hand on these projects. I can simply sit at my desk and explain to him what to do, and he gets it done, and he handles it perfectly. I simply just told him how to fix this thing. He went out there, took care of the problem all by himself, and he did an excellent job. I don't think it would have worked as good if we didn't use that special grease. That penetrating grease was pretty incredible. It ate away at all that old dried up grease, and those motors are steering like they're brand new.
Next week on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat, FS boating editor George Labonte meets with the owner of a 23-foot regulator as it's readied for the addition of an engine bracket. And George Labonte sits down with Brian O'Donnell, owner of Marine Customs Unlimited, to revisit some of the most memorable builds and restorations from this season of Project Dreamboat. The filming of Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat has been shot on location at Marine Customs Unlimited. You dream it, we build it.